Yes, let's talk about hockey, the show that journeys through the history of the sport of ice hockey from its disputed origins to the game we see today. After nearly a decade and a half of expansion, the NHL's size remained locked at 21 teams throughout the 1980s. But after the Wayne Gretzky trade to LA in 1988 grew hockey's popularity in that city, the league began to look at tapping into new markets during the 90s. In year 3 of this 90s expansion effort, another pair of teams made their debut. The first of these two became the fourth franchise in NHL history to set up in California, the Anaheim Ducks.
The franchise was awarded to the Walt Disney Company in December of 1992, and by March, the new club was dubbed the Mighty Ducks after Disney's film which had been released a few months prior. Later that same month, former Sharks GM Jack Ferreira was brought on to once again become the GM of a new expansion team, and by May, Canucks assistant coach Ron Wilson took up the post of head coach for the Ducks. In the expansion draft, Anaheim focused more on the defensive end of the game, acquiring Chicago enforcer Stu Grimson and Russian defenseman Alexei Kasatonov, who was a member of the Soviet national team's famed Green Unit that dominated international hockey during the 1980s. On October 8, 1993, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim skated out for their first game in their new home rink, the Arrowhead Pond, against the Detroit Red Wings. Unfortunately, this first game did not go well for the Ducks as they lost 7-2. It would take Anaheim a couple more games before they recorded their first win when they beat Edmonton 4-3. Behind their defensive core and the goaltending duo of Guy Hebert and Ron Tugnut, the Ducks were able to string together 33 wins in their first year, a new record for a first-year team, which was also matched by their expansion counterparts in Florida that year. Sadly, this was still not enough to gain entry into the playoffs that season, as they finished 11 points behind San Jose for the final spot in the Western Conference. In their lockout-shortened sophomore season, the Mighty Ducks unfortunately regressed from their first season, finishing last in their conference, despite the debut of a couple of their draft picks, Paul Kariya and Steve Ruchin. By early February of the 95-96 season, Anaheim was still struggling to post a winning record despite the All-Star season Kariya was having. So on February 7, 1996, the Mighty Ducks made a blockbuster trade, sending Chad Kilger, Oleg Tverdovsky, and a third-round draft pick to the Winnipeg Jets in exchange for star winger Teemu Selanne, Mark Schwinard, and a fourth-round draft pick. Selanne was partnered with Ruchin and Kariya, and by the end of the season, these three were one of the top lines in the league. After the Selanne trade, the Mighty Ducks won 17 of their last 28 games of the season, but unfortunately they still fell one win shy of the playoffs, losing the 8th spot in the West to the Jets. In the 96-97 season, the Mighty Ducks added even more firepower when they signed veteran winger Jari Kurri and then traded for defenseman Dmitry Mironov early in the year. With the Kariya, Selanne, and Ruchin line combining for 275 points, and goaltender Guy Hebert having a career year by finishing in the league's top 10 for wins, saves, and save percentage, Anaheim finally secured a spot in the playoffs with their club's first winning record of 36, 33, and 13. Against Phoenix in the opening round, Anaheim skated to 4-2 wins in games 1 and 2. However, the Coyotes mounted a comeback by winning the next 3 games and threatened to put a quick end to the Mighty Ducks' first postseason trip. But in Game 6, Paul Kariya came up big for his club with a pair of goals, including the overtime winner, to extend the series. Then in Game 7, Hebert put up his best performance of the series by stopping all 31 of Phoenix's shots to shut the Coyotes out 3-0 and advanced Anaheim to the second round. In the semifinals, the Mighty Ducks were matched against the Red Wings. This series would be short, but very close, as 3 games needed overtime to decide a winner. Unfortunately for the Mighty Ducks, Detroit's tough defense and an injury to Hebert in Game 2 of the series put them on the losing end of what ended up being a 4-game sweep.
Prior to the next season, Ron Wilson was fired from his head coaching duties and replaced by Calgary coach Pierre Pagé. Then, during the year, Korea would only play in 22 games due to injuries, which greatly limited the Mighty Ducks' offensive abilities. Despite Solani's 52 goals tying for number one in the league, and his 86 points putting him in the top 10 for that category as well, Anaheim was shut out a league-high 11 times in the 97-98 season and finished second from last in their conference.
In the 98-99 season, Craig Hartsburg was brought in as the new head coach, while Solani and a healthy Korea each tallied over 100 points, and a Bear led the league in saves to lift the Mighty Ducks back into the playoffs. Additionally, Solani also earned the newly minted Rocket Richard Award for his league-leading 47 goals. Unfortunately, Anaheim was once again swept by Detroit in the playoffs this year, though this time in the first round. The Mighty Ducks regressed over the next 3 seasons after this playoff defeat, finishing last in their division each year. Despite finishing among the top 5 point scorers in the league during the 1999-2000 season, Korea and Solani's numbers dropped in the 2000-2001 season, causing Anaheim to deal Solani to San Jose in March of 2001 in exchange for winger Jeff Friesen, goaltender Steve Shields, and a second-round draft pick. Additionally that year, goaltender Guy Bear, who was the last player left from the Mighty Ducks' original expansion roster, was put on waivers and claimed by the Rangers, while another goaltender was added to the roster in June of 2000 when Jean-Sébastien Giguère was acquired from Calgary. After 3 straight disappointing seasons, the roster changes continued in the 2002-2003 season. Behind the bench, Mike Babcock was named as the new head coach. On the blue line, Sandis Ozolinsh and Rob Niedermayer were acquired around the trade deadline, and on the offensive side, Adam Oates, Peter Sikora, and Steve Thomas joined the roster. With these additions, the Mighty Ducks were able to secure a spot in the playoffs this year as the 7th seed in the Western Conference. In the first round, they again faced their longtime playoff nemesis, the Red Wings. However, thanks to the outstanding play of goaltender J.S. Giguère, who stopped 165 out of 171 shots, Anaheim shocked everyone by sweeping Detroit after Steve Ruchin scored the winning goal 6 minutes and 53 seconds into overtime during Game 4. Against the number 1 ranked Stars in Round 2, Giguère was again the difference maker as 5 out of the 6 games in the series were decided by only 1 goal, with the first game requiring 5 overtime periods, becoming the 4th longest game in NHL history. Again, the Mighty Ducks were able to pull off the upset victory thanks to a late third-period goal by Ozolinsh in Game 6. In the conference finals for the first time, Anaheim faced another team on a surprising playoff run, the 6th-ranked Minnesota Wild. Giguère was at the top of his game in this series, shutting out the Wild in the first 3 games and only allowing 1 goal in the 4th to give the Mighty Ducks another sweeping victory and the right to play in the Stanley Cup Finals. Giguère was once again the center of attention in the finals against New Jersey as he battled another hot goaltender, Martin Brodeur. In this series, the home team would win each game, and even though the Mighty Ducks were able to push things to a 7th game, the Devils ultimately came out on top. However, despite being on the losing side, Giguère was still awarded the Conn Smythe Trophy for playoff MVP, becoming the 5th player in NHL history to win the trophy as a member of the losing team.
Following this incredible run, Paul Kariya's contract expired, and when he and the club's management couldn't come to an agreement on a new one, Kariya ended up signing with Colorado in the offseason. Despite the addition of forwards Sergei Fedorov and Vinny Prospal, the loss of Kariya and Giguère's inability to duplicate his performance from the previous year caused Anaheim to drop to 12th in the West, leaving them out of the playoffs. Then, during the 2004-2005 lockout year, the Mighty Ducks were sold to Broadcom co-founder Henry Samueli and his wife Susan. The new owners hired former Vancouver GM and president Brian Burke as the team's new general manager, and former Norris Trophy winning defenseman Randy Carlyle was brought on as the new head coach.
With the new bench staff in place, the roster was retooled too. Fedorov, Sikora, and Ozolinsh would all be dealt, while the club acquired Rob Niedermayer's brother Scott, reacquired fan favorite Teemu Selanne, and premiered rookie forwards Ryan Getzlaf, Corey Perry, and Chris Kunitz. With all of these changes, Anaheim put together their club's best year to make it back into the playoffs in the 2005-2006 season, and were even able to advance back to the third round. However, this time they were the ones to fall prey to an underdog team as the 8th-ranked Edmonton Oilers upset them in 5 games. Prior to the start of the 2006-2007 season, Anaheim got a bit of a makeover when they changed their team name from the Mighty Ducks to simply the Ducks, and altered their team's logo and colors as well. The Ducks then made one more big trade when they acquired defenseman Chris Pronger from Edmonton. This year, the Ducks would win their first ever division title and finished ranked 2nd in the Western Conference.
In the playoffs this year, they were matched against Minnesota in the opening round. Behind the combined 11 points put up by Pronger and Getzlaf, and the goaltending tandem of Giguere and Ilya Bryzgalov, Anaheim won the first 3 games of the series before ultimately finishing the Wild off after 5 games. Then in round 2 against Vancouver, Giguere outdueled the Canucks' Roberto Luongo in 3 overtime games to get the Ducks back to the conference finals for a second consecutive year after another 5-game series.
For the third round, Anaheim once again faced the Detroit Red Wings. The two teams traded wins during the first 4 games, deadlocking the series at 2 games apiece. In Game 5, Detroit was poised to take the lead in the series. However, a goal by Scott Niedermayer with less than a minute left in the third period forced the game into overtime, where Selanne scored the game winner a little over 11 minutes in to instead put the Red Wings on the brink. Then in Game 6, the Ducks built up a 3-goal lead after 2 periods, and thanks to a 4th goal by Samuel Paulson, Anaheim was able to hold off the Red Wings' third period rally to win the game and the Western Conference Championship for the second time in their club's history. In the finals, the Ducks' opponent was another club that had yet to win a cup, the Ottawa Senators. Thanks to goals by Travis Moen and Samuel Paulson, Anaheim won the first 2 games of the series by 1 goal each. But when the series shifted to Ottawa for Game 3, the Senators didn't let their home crowd down as they cut the Ducks' series lead in half with a 5-3 win. However, over the next 2 games, Anaheim's defense and third period offense gave them 3-2 and 6-2 victories, making them the first West Coast team since 1925, as well as the first Californian team ever to win the Stanley Cup. Since winning their first Cup title, the Ducks have become perennial contenders in the Western Conference, making the playoffs in 8 of their 10 years since 2007, advancing as far as the third round twice during that time, and winning 5 straight division titles starting in 2012-2013. And as their latest season continues, so does their quest to finally add another Cup banner to their collection.